Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to this episode of Sree's Daily Global Show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and it's my honor to convene this daily conversation for the last 238 days in a row as we dealt with the pandemic in the United States and all over the world. Tonight is election night in America, on the most unusual election night in U.S. history. And we'll bring you what we've been bringing you for the last 238 days, insights and analysis from great speakers and comments from a global audience. We're live right now on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. Please share this with your friends and family. We're live right now on Scroll Global and Scroll.in. And we have many guests, including Bob Anthony is with us, veteran journalist. Many of you know him. He's been a guest host before. We'll also be joined by Sonal Shah, at Sonal R. Shah, former Obama appointee and executive director of the Georgetown Beek Center, and Deepa Sharma, at Deepa Sharma ESQ. She is communications director at South Asians for Biden. And Bob is at New York Bob. You'll meet them in just a minute. Hi, everyone. I'm Sree. Thank you so much for being here. We're very grateful to you. What a night. So much to talk about, and we appreciate you spending some of your time with us. We will have CNN on the side here so you can know what's happening, and we will talk about the results as they come in throughout the hour or so that we're together. And we are very grateful to our guests for being here. So let me first say hello to Bob Anthony and thank Bob for being here. Hi, Bob.
Good to see you, Sree.
What a night. How has it gone from your point of view so far?
It's just plain strange. I mean, it's tense. It's kind of lurid. If you listen to some of the weird reports of robocalls and whatnot, it's just not what I've been through before. Let me see if I can run it down. The last election, I believe I was outside the Javits Center expecting Hillary Clinton win and a big celebration. And of course, that didn't happen. In 2012, I was in the lobby in a ballroom in the New York Sheraton. That was the Democratic headquarters in New York City, celebrating Obama's second term. And in 2008, I was in the newsroom, there we go, of the New York Daily News. I was a copy editor. Watching the returns come in. And here I am sitting in a room at home, following the elections on my cell phone, on a little TV here, and on the web. Different.
And you also have your Facebook portal, right?
Yes. I'm watching, out of one eye, I'm watching it on my Facebook portal as I pay attention to this broadcast.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. We appreciate you being here. We wanted to have on the show with us a political expert, someone who has worked on multiple campaigns and worked in the government. We're very, very pleased to have with us Sonal Shah. So let's bring her on stage. Hi, Sonal.
Hey, Sree. It's great to be here. Bob, good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you. My first question always, how are you? Where are you? And how have you been handling the day so far? I know you were out being very busy when helping today.
I am currently in Texas. My parents live here, so I came here since Georgetown is virtual and have been working out of here. I've been doing lit drops and poll watching in several different places in Harris County and Fort Bend County today.
And it's now 10 p.m. Eastern time. How are you feeling about how it's gone so far?
Nervous as all heck. North Carolina is extraordinarily close. Looks like Florida is going to go for the Republicans. And then Texas is close, but unless the El Paso numbers pick up dramatically, it's going to be a tough race. But we've also picked up some seats in Texas. Some numbers in some counties have flipped, which is interesting for Texas. And I tell people to remember Texas as like not a one election or another election. Think about the election in Texas as it's a process of change.
And over time, Texas will turn much more blue than it has been. But that starts tonight. And the fact that it's even competitive is interesting. We still have a long way to go. And We are looking at all kinds of information that's coming in. Let's listen for a little bit to John King, and then we'll come back to both of you for your thoughts.
Because we're so early. So just be careful. Don't look at the map at this hour and make any judgments, because we're in the middle chapters here. In some states, in the early chapters, again, the president has a lead in Michigan right now. Last time we were here, he was leading in Wayne County. We knew that wasn't going to happen. Joe Biden is ahead now, but that's a tiny, tiny vote count. There's a long way to go in these states. That's what makes them interesting. They're going to flip back and forth a little bit. Let's move over to Wisconsin and look. And again, the president has a narrow lead here, 51 if you want to round that up, to 48 if you round that up. But again, 30% of the vote, a long way to go. So when you pull it out like this, people look at it at home and you can, wow, we're not done. We have a long way to go in a lot of places, including Virginia is red right now. If the president can keep Virginia red, the president's going to be reelected. But we don't know this yet still. 53 to 45, that's actually gotten closer in recent times. And again, you come back up here. This is where elections in Virginia are won and lost. Northern Virginia.
I'm just going to pause there. I see the AP has already called Virginia for Biden. So obviously CNN is behind in its projections there.
Fairfax County is the largest county in Virginia, and that county, at least what John King is showing, is really undercounted yet. So I think it was only at like 20%. So that's really where the numbers and the margins may break out in Virginia.
That's really good to know, and so much for us to learn. Let's hear from Bob. What are some of the observations that you have so far, what you've been seeing tonight?
Well, he just had his finger on Wisconsin, and he was pointing at the northern counties, which tend to vote Republican from year to year. But just before we went on air tonight, we heard about the slow counts. No problem with the counts, but just what the Milwaukee County officials are telling us will be a slow count. And that's Biden territory. That all of much of southeastern Wisconsin is blue. And that's what will be coming in late. So for Biden, that's good if he doesn't fall too far behind in the projected red areas upstate.
And so there's lots of news still to be made, lots of history still to be made tonight. Folks, we're live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Please tag your friends. They can join us now and they can chat with us. We look forward to seeing some of your comments as well. Sonal, can you tell us where you were 4 years ago, and how does that night compare?
I was in Pennsylvania in 2016. I was running a small office in southern Pennsylvania for Hillary Clinton, and I remember watching the numbers come in and realizing that this was going to be a really long night. So I basically got in my car and drove to DC because it just didn't look as good as we thought it would.
And so that's how you knew that things weren't going to go your way, the way that a lot of us were cheering for and hoping for. Of course, part of that story that night was that we had our first female candidate for president, major party candidate for president, the nominee of the Democratic Party. And among the many reasons she lost, it has been established that some of it was that America was still not ready to vote for a woman. Fast forward 4 years, we now have a South Asian woman, a Black woman on the ticket as a vice presidential candidate. How do you think about the issue of women as leaders? Where are we with that? And by the way, do you accept that that was one of the factors in 2016?
I mean, I'd be interested in Bob and others. I think there were so many factors in 2016. I mean, one was that she was a woman. Another was, frankly, all of the news stations were giving Donald Trump free airtime. They were covering his rallies 100%. They were not covering the rallies for Hillary Clinton. There was an enthusiasm gap for a variety of reasons. The Black vote didn't come out in parts in like Pennsylvania and places like that. So there were so many things that were happening. I don't think there's any one thing that, we lost that election. I think there's probably a series of lots of things. And I think we went into this election with our eyes wide open. Like, we know that there are many people, especially in these red counties, as you see, that support Trump. And we had to go in and bring out the vote. And I think that's what we've been spending in Michigan. That's what we've been spending our time in Wisconsin. That's what we've been spending our time in Pennsylvania. So I think it's going to be a long night. I think we shouldn't look at these counties, but each of these counties is going to tell us something.
And one of the factors, of course, is that the early voting this time, and when that's counted, is affecting this, right? In some places, it clearly seems to be that one of the factors in tonight's final count is going to be the fact that a lot of people did the early voting, and there may not have been as many people turning out in person if they were worried about the virus. And I joked about this back in March and April, saying the election, because I didn't expect at all that we'd still be surging in the election time. But I made the joke that if this is still around during the election, Democrats will stay home and follow the signs, and Republicans will happily go and vote. What are the signs that we've seen some of that, Bob, in what you've been reading and watching?
There again, you see the division between the part of America which is really concerned about their health, about getting through to the next week and not affecting the health of their family. And then you see the other side of America. You ask them about the coronavirus, and the answer turns to economics. How am I going to pay my bills? When are we going to reopen? And that's how it splits between these red counties and blue ones. Often enough, you don't hear the concern about the coronavirus. And yeah, I heard the same jokes you did, that that the Republicans were going to come out in force because they're not particularly worried about getting sick. They're more worried about being able to pay for, I guess, the medicine after they get sick. But this division is like we've never seen before, just in mindset.
And here we are. One of the things that strikes me, Sonal, is that this shows you that you could have scandal after scandal after scandal. You could lie 25,000 times, as one of the counts put it. You could have millions of people sick, in part because of the leadership of the president, and still you could see how close this is. So there is something about this president, this candidate, and how people are giving him the benefit of the doubt in millions of people.
Yeah. I mean, Sree, I think one of the interesting questions to be asking here is sort of, what messages are not getting out that we need to be getting out? So yes, he is lying. Yes, we know he's lying. It's hard to fathom that the president of the United States would lie as much as he's doing, and the American public is listening to it and believing it. But it does make me wonder, is like, why do they want to believe it? Why?
What are your theories on that? Yeah, that's a great question.
I don't have a grand theory. I'm just wondering if, like, people are so fed up with politics as they see it that they are willing to sort of accept the lies as the truth, and because he's telling them on Twitter, they believe it's the truth. And so it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder sort of how we're gonna. And you were in technology, so how are we gonna reconcile that there's so much information coming at us that people don't know what the truth anymore is because they're looking at what they think is the truth?
Well, I actually had an interesting conversation with a good friend just the other day over just what you're saying. Why aren't people believing the science? And there was a woman on with Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes Sunday night, and she was an attorney. She is an attorney. She's an executive. She had voted for Trump before, and she's going to vote for Trump again. And Scott asked her, well, after all of these deaths through the coronavirus, do you think that Trump has handled this properly? And she basically said, the people who passed due to coronavirus, that's something that God did. It was God manages whether we stay or whether we go. Trump might be president, but he's not God. So it's basically her way of justifying how it was handled by Trump. And so it's just people who think differently, and it's hard for me, even as tolerant as I try to be, to fathom it.
So you've been part of, you've watched the culture wars at work for the last 20 years or so. But now I see a new culture war, the culture war of the masks, the culture war of understanding science. I mean, if Biden loses tonight, I just really fear for the future of this country, that science, facts, and the health of so many people. Trump told us that he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and he wouldn't lose a single vote. If he wins tonight, he shows that he could kill 100,000 people through negligence and disinformation, and he could still win. It's stunning to me. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe that we are here. I mean, I'm sort of still taking in the comment that Bob was talking about, and I think, you know, it is hard to believe that we are here. It's hard to believe we don't believe in science. It's hard to believe we don't have a truth anymore that we choose to believe in. We don't believe doctors anymore. It makes you wonder, like, what does the U.S. stand for if we don't even stand for truth and some version of honesty amongst our president? And, you know, I've worked overseas for a long time, and this is stuff that we were telling other countries. We would go to other countries and talk about elections and truth and honesty. And here we are in our own country standing up for democracy that we can't even have this. Our country is so divided, we don't even believe the truth anymore.
And this is so worrisome. Let's look at some of the comments coming in. Jonathan is watching from the East Village. He's watched 238 nights in a row. And Jonathan, thank you for being here. I am truly worried about this country's future, and we don't know where the elections are going tonight. We will look at the CNN tables in just a minute. Mamena says, "Don't tell me the boomers voted for Republicans again." And of course they did. Sneha is watching from California. Neil's watching from Springfield and taking a break from PBS. And Rose said that I heard that Virginia was called for Biden before 8 p.m. That's right. AP has already called it, but CNN has not yet. We have a troll in here saying vote for Trump. The voting has already happened, my friend. It's now all up to everything else. Sandhya says, a nice break from CNN. Thanks. Jonathan says the Globe and Mail has an opinion piece titled "Trump Destroyed the Media Ecosystem." Blurry Social says, I'm scared. And Sneha says, hate and misinformation really have become the new normal. It's so scary to think that that's what's happening right now, and that's where we are. Let's take a look at John King and see what they're saying. Let me just turn up the sound here.
These other places, again, look at all the red in the middle of the map, right? Not a ton of people live here, but the president runs it up, gets his 6,000 votes here, gets his 14,000 votes here, and you go on and on and on. And that's how he does it. In these smaller counties, turnout is high, he runs it up. And so far, let's come down here. Just want to look one more time. That has stayed exactly the same, 25,482. South Carolina was blue for a little bit early on. See that one going back to its DNA, the conservative state there. Georgia, not as competitive at the moment. Again, 52% though. So again, you're in this night where you have three different kinds of voting, different states, sometimes within a state, different counties reporting them in different order. The Democrats were hoping right here to have a closer state, but look, Fulton County still, again, a third of the vote. This is it. This is by far. And so you move around these counties here. You have Cobb here. You move Fulton here. You come out here. It's very slow. 1% here. So we have this is the bulk of the vote in the state.
Georgia. So anyway, that's going on. Let's go back to Sonal. Your thoughts on what you're seeing?
I think there's I have two comments to make. One, it's great to have so much data so early, but we also we have to sort of understand how big numbers have to be in these counties to win in order to make up for the Republican counties. The thing to remember, and we've known this for every election that I know of, Trump voters come out, or the Republicans come out on the day of the election. So we were also focused on the early voting numbers. But what we have always known, and the Biden campaign has known this too, is that the Trump voters were going to come out on the day of the election, which is what we're seeing, and which is what the numbers are actually showing right now. But I think it's important to remember that these counties are 1% is nothing. Please don't take 1% as any information other than it's 1%. When these numbers, if somebody wins by 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 votes in one of those counties, that's what really counts, because that's how they add up the numbers, which is how much margin do you win by And that's the thing to keep in mind, is the margins by which you win. So for example, in Florida, even though we lost Miami-Dade County, we won a lot of other counties or flipped numbers in a lot of counties. That's the thing to keep in mind for the long term, is which counties can you count on, and then where do you need to run up numbers everywhere else. So while we're looking at win or loss, remember that what everybody else is looking at and what we look at is by county, how many are we winning.
That's a great point, and in fact, you made several points there that are really important. That this is not over. There's still a long way to go, and I would like to hear a little bit more from Bob about Wisconsin, where he has spent time and he knows, he knows what it's like there. We talked this summer when Kenosha happened and all the terrible ways in which law enforcement responded there. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Sure. And I'll refer to a recent Frontline story on PBS, which went over the shenanigans that went on in the primaries in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And he basically spoke about how hard it was to get an absentee ballot, how hard it was to get them counted. And then towards the end of the show, he went back into the neighborhood where a couple of women had voted early, and he came with a laptop, unfolded it. He showed them a list of voters whose votes were not counted. It didn't show who they voted for, but it said that these absentee ballots did not count because there was a defect. And the two women looked at the laptop and they saw name after name that they recognized. So that was something that needed to be repaired. Hope they did that for this election. That's part of what I worry about in Milwaukee County, Kenosha County, which is the southernmost, and Racine, which is in between.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the difference that the way in which people voted early made so far. I know you put in a lot of effort, Sonal, and what were the campaigns thinking about, and how did they prioritize it? You talked a little bit about it, but I'd love to hear some more.
Yeah, I think remember, early voting is state by state, county by county. So it's state by state, first of all, for early voting. For example, in Texas, early voting was open for 3 weeks before the election. It ended on last Friday. And what we were trying to do is get as many people out in early voting as possible, because when you do it in early voting, it's usually spread out versus having to go exactly on the day of the election, that you may have to wait in line longer if you can't take time off. But if you go in early voting over a 3-week period, there's a lot of time to come in. Now, Texas was unusual with 3 weeks. Frankly, a lot of other places, it's only 2 days or 3 days or 4 days. So I think what we were trying to do is trying to get as many people to come out and vote as possible in early voting. And that was the initial goal of early voting. So in Harris County, about 60% of the population that was registered to vote came out to vote in early voting.
Thank you. Let's look at some news headlines. We see that the Democrats defeated a sitting senator in Colorado. Hickenlooper beat Gardner, which is good news. But I also see, to balance that out, Republican Tommy Tuberville beat Doug Jones, who had won in that very unusual race in 2017. And then and Tuberville is a former football coach at Auburn. And for anyone who knows America or knows the South in the South, football is so big, and to have a college football coach be a candidate for the Senate means that they have a big built-in support. How do you see the Senate shaping up so far, Sonal?
Well, I don't think we expected to win that seat in Alabama, to be fair. Hickenlooper was something we were expecting, so that's great. We'll be watching Arizona very closely. Maine is one we hope to pick up also. And I think, and then we'll have to see how Montana goes and sort of what happens in Georgia, because there's potentially 2 competitive seats in Georgia.
Yeah, and we are also watching what happens in the House. I think it's expected that the Democrats will continue to build on the momentum from 2018, but we really won't know, obviously, for a while longer. But there is a lot of optimism about holding on to the House. Flipping the Senate was always going to be hard. I want to talk for a moment about the polling that came down. I read a piece yesterday saying that even with adjusting for the historical errors in the 2016 election, Biden will win today. And even if it gets worse, the polling errors are worse than Biden, he'll still win today. So I'm hoping that the pollsters get it right. Otherwise, if they get it wrong, it's going to be very, I think it might be the end of modern polling as we know it. We'll have to come up with all kinds of new ways to count this. Bob, your thoughts, and then Sonal.
Well, exit polling, which was something that was really useful in the past, not so much tonight because of the early voting, because of the different ways that people could vote. So really, exit polling tonight gives you nothing unless you know how to handle it along with the other big data to combine it to make it something relevant. So that's a big change in how we look at things the night of an election.
Sure. So let's go to California now. We have another guest joining us. Our friend Deepa Sharma is with us with South Asians for Biden. She was here with us the night that Kamala Harris was named the vice presidential candidate, the running mate of Joe Biden. Let's have her say hello to us. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, welcome from California. Thank you for joining us. You must be exhausted. Tell us where you are right now.
Yes, I'm exhausted, but I'm hopeful. When you're tired on election night, it means you've put in some work. And so I'm just anxious and awaiting results. And I have to say this election cycle has been rewarding because we've been able to organize the South Asian community in an unprecedented way. And it's been a beautiful thing to be a part of and experience.
So thank you for joining us today. I know how busy you are. Please follow Deepa. She's Deepa Sharma ESQ on Twitter, and our other guest Sonal Shah is Sonal R Shah on Twitter, and Bob is at New York Bob. Deepa, how's it been to work with Senator Harris, and what are you hearing?
Well, I'm a proud constituent of Senator Harris, and we at South Asians for Biden have been working tirelessly to get Vice President Biden and Senator Kamala Harris elected. The campaign has done so much outreach to the South Asian community, and Senator Kamala Harris's South Asian heritage was just such a special thing for our community that we can look up and we could see someone like ourselves on the ticket. She's a second-generation immigrant. She shares a lot of the experiences that we share, and so it's just been such a really great election cycle. It gives me so much hope to see this unfold.
I'm just breaking news. NBC is predicting that the Democrats will hold the House. So that's good news from my point of view. Our guests, any of you have a question for Deepa, please feel free to jump in. And I would also love to hear from you, Deepa, about what it's been like these 2.5 months since August, since we had you on. Do you feel like you and the campaign were able to do everything possible in the middle of a pandemic to give yourselves the best shot possible?
Absolutely. So I know that from an organizing perspective, South Asians for Biden was calling into battleground states. We had regularly recurring phone banks, states like North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, Texas, Nevada, Pennsylvania. So we had converted people that had never volunteered for any candidate and made them star phone bankers in this election. So we have seen unprecedented engagement. And yes, in the midst of a pandemic, that was very challenging because we can't go door to door, but it did allow us to be a little bit more surgical in reaching out to communities like our Asian Pacific Islander community.
And that certainly made a difference. Let's talk to Sonal, who has watched the community grow and become more politically aware. She's been active for so many years. Talk a little bit about that, please, Sonal.
First of all, Deepa, congratulations. I mean, the number of events that you all put on for South Asians for Biden has been so incredible. I would love to actually hear from you, if you don't mind, a little bit about how much you've seen it grow, because from what I have seen in this cycle is the South Asian community came together and really held not only events, but events all around the country and really pushed the community to come out in for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Right. So we did over 50 events. We had religious affinity groups under South Asians for Biden. So we had Sikh Americans for Biden, Jain Americans for Biden. We made phone calls to over 65,000 people this election cycle. We were in 20 states. So I just think about how much that will pay dividends for us, yes, in this election cycle, but for years to come. And I've never seen anything like this happen before.
Yeah, but I'd say even in Texas, the AAPI communities outperformed. I think we way outperformed 2016, which was a large number. But this time, I think we were like 140% above where we were in 2016.
Absolutely. It's making the difference. It's moving the needle in these states where, just a few years ago, we never would have thought that Texas was up for grabs. Now we're fighting in that battle. We're taking the fight to Republicans, and it's really heartening to see that.
And what do you think is needed to do more? Like what more, based on your experience this time, what more could we be doing?
That's a really great question. So I do think we have ways to go to train people to be civically engaged. I do think there are a fair amount of people that maybe feel like spectators still. Maybe it's cultural. I think that more can be done. People in different in the business communities in different sectors, and teach them a little bit about how our policies at the federal government really impact their bottom line. So I think there's more to be done in organizing and educating the community.
Yeah, thank you. Folks, let's just want to note the time, and just so grateful to everybody for being here. One of the things, Bob, I know you're keeping an eye on the headlines, and anything that we should be paying attention to?
No, I mean the states that were mentioned, they're the ones I see in, being discussed on CBS at the moment. When all is said and done, I'd like to see how many, what percentage of young voters voted this time around, because this has been an amazing year with protests and marches and rallies and other events, and that draws out young people in droves. But by election time, they're all withered and they don't show up. I would love to see when all this is over if we've made a bump there, whether we're getting more engagement from the let's say 18-25 group.
Deepa or Sonal, I know you worked very hard on that question. So any thoughts?
I'm happy to take it, and then I'm going to have to run, Sree. I'm really sorry, but I will say I think I think we still have to do a lot more to engage young people in the political question. I think we need to bring them in sooner, not just when we're voting, but to engage them and do more civic engagement with them. And frankly, I think we need to do it with a lot of communities. I think we should and take this. I think we will win, but I do think we should engage better and do more with each of these communities, and not take for granted every 4 years that they're going to come out and vote, because it's not a given, and we have to make sure that we're engaging them in between elections.
Thank you, Sonal. What are you going to be watching for the rest of the night?
I'm watching Wisconsin, Michigan, and North Carolina right now, because I think those counties, that race is very tight in North Carolina. And then I'm really looking at a few candidates. I want to make sure we can get some of the candidates across at the state and local levels.
Thank you, and thank you for everything you do, Sonal, not just in the political work, but also at Georgetown, and for the work where you've inspired so many people to take an interest in public life and public service. And we wish you the very best. And thank you for joining us.
Well, Sree, thank you for everything. I mean, we've been in this journey together for a long time, and really, really do appreciate everything that you do, and always constantly keeping the community together, but also pushing us when we need to be pushed. So I really appreciate that. And Bob and Deepa, it's great to see you. Deepa, congratulations on everything, and Bob, I look forward to seeing what you're saying.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sonal. Bye-bye. So we have Deepa only for a few more minutes. I know they're going to be up very late in California, keeping track of everything. Deepa, talk a little bit about the South Asian community. There's a big South Asian audience watching tonight. What are some of the things you learned about how they responded to this election cycle? And I know President Trump hoped to pick off a lot more South Asian votes than he had the last time. So talk a little bit about what you saw so far.
Yeah, so the South Asian community is not a monolith. There are things that are important to America are important to the South Asian community. The South Asian community was particularly impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. I'm thinking specifically about hoteliers, moteliers, folks in Florida, Georgia, Texas, people who own small businesses in our community, and we're just eviscerated by this out of control pandemic that the administration botched its management of. So that was a really important issue for the community. Healthcare is a really big issue for the community, and also our community has frontline workers that have borne the brunt of this pandemic, as doctors, as essential workers, as transportation workers. Our community is sensitive to the policies that have been put in place by this administration, and we are reacting to those policies. I'm thinking about immigration, for instance. This administration used the pandemic as an excuse to implement draconian H-1B visa freezes, for instance, even though we know that immigrants are crucial to bringing an economy back, to spur the economy. But instead, they're using this crisis as an excuse to further slam shut the doors of American opportunity. So we are sensitive to this. We know this, and in spite of Trump trying to pick off our community, trying to win us over with photo ops, we can see and we can feel the effects of his policies. And that's what we're seeing this election cycle.
Thank you, Deepa. I know we have you only for a few more minutes. I wanted to just bring Bob into this part of the conversation. We talk a lot about Senator Harris and her South Asian heritage, but of course, she's also African-American. And how do you, Bob, think about how did a country that voted twice for President Obama, so many of those people decided to vote for Trump in many key parts of this country? Do you think that having Senator Harris will have brought back some of those folks who, both white and black, who voted for Trump?
Unfortunately, there is a part of the country, a significant part of the country, that just doesn't visualize women as leaders, and it's truly unfortunate. I remember having a discussion in 2016 before Hillary had picked her running mate, and I said, "Is there a chance she'll pick Elizabeth Warren?" And my friend just chuckled, and he said, "It's tough enough for America to vote for one woman, much less two. They'll never vote for two." And that was his read on the entire thing. Didn't matter what kind of a competency both might have had. But yeah, that is deep in parts of this country. And it's not just Hispanic, it's not just Black, it's not just regional. There's a big swath that just doesn't visualize women as leaders. And as Kamala was announced, I felt a little of that pushback just by the wicked things I'd see on the web.
Deepa, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, 2016 also was a lesson in how sexism is a force in American politics. And I think that the 2020 election cycle with so many women running, but yet none of them prevailed, even though it was pretty disparate field, I think was also, it goes to show that it is a force in politics, and there are, needles that women have to thread in American politics. But Senator Harris, she said the other day that she eats no for breakfast. And I think she is teaching us how we can move forward, how we can visualize women in these really powerful positions. And so I think we will have grown as a country as a result of Senator Harris's leadership and her performance this election cycle, no matter how the results come down tonight.
Well, thank you. And as Sonal said, you should be very proud, Deepa, of all the work that you did and galvanizing so many people who otherwise were not connected properly into the election process. Deepa, we know you need to go. You want to leave us with some final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm anxious, I'm nervous, but I'm just so proud of the work that people put in, the first-time volunteers, the folks who woke up after Election Day in 2016 and just thought, never again will I experience that. And, we have ways to grow as a country, but every little thing that we can do helps. So thank you so much, Sree, for having us on and spotlighting South Asians for Biden, the work we do. And thank you, Bob. It's an honor to be on this panel with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deepa. Good luck tonight. And we're cheering for you and for everybody who's put in such hard work. Thank you. Bye-bye. So here we are, Bob. We have a few more minutes to go. Let's check in with CNN. Let me turn up the volume here.
Let's see, 98 to 95. Look at how close it is right now. Actually, we have a key race alert right now. Let's check in some of the numbers. Coming in from Michigan, 37% of the vote is in. Trump still maintains a 235,000 vote lead in Michigan, 54.8% to 43.4%. 37% of the vote is in. 33% of the vote is in Pennsylvania. Trump has a 236,000 vote lead in Pennsylvania. 54.3% to 44.3%. 37% of the vote is in Wisconsin. It's close. 25,000 vote lead for Trump over Biden, 50.1% to 48.2%. In Georgia, 58% of the vote is in. Trump has looks like a pretty comfortable lead of 387,000 votes, 55.7% to 43.1% in those states. Let's take a look at some more states right now. In Arizona, right now, 75% of the vote is in. Biden looks like he has a relatively comfortable 208,000 vote lead over Trump, 53.7% to 45%.
That's surprising.
In Minnesota,
I agree.
37% of the vote is in. Biden there looks like a pretty comfortable, nearly 300,000 vote lead over Trump, 60.7% to 37.2%. In Iowa right now, a quarter of the vote is in. Biden has a 76,000 vote lead over Trump, 57.
So right there, if we stop, Bob, that looks very promising with those states that are, you don't always expect to go in one direction. But of course, that's not how the election works. I also want to point out that there is a report that more than 2.2 million ballots to be counted in Pennsylvania, about 87% of the total. So settle in, everybody.
Yes, I agree there.
Yeah, so that is going to be something that we'll all we'll pay attention to. Part of the reason we went at 10 p.m. today, Bob, is that we were told that if Biden wins Florida, then there's a chance that he'd run the table, and therefore we'd know early in this 10 o'clock hour what is going to happen. But clearly, there was a polling. The polling error was much bigger than anybody thought, because he won fairly comfortably in Florida, it appears to be so far. And then what does that mean in the rest of the country, and where do we go from here? So there's a lot to look at. I still go back to that point that polling in this country, if in fact Biden does not win in this country, will have to be completely torn apart and put back together. The way in which people were describing the chances of Biden winning was just way too positive. And is there a chance that could itself be an issue?
I remember the postmortems in 2016, and the people who were just flabbergasted by how far off they were. They thought they had it down pat. They figured at worst maybe a 5% margin of error here or there, but no, they were way off. And it does, and you're right. It we'll have to find another way to figure this out, because the exit polling won't do it. The big data, as far, it's much better than it used to be. The analysis, the data scientists that we can reach back to analyze the counties and the types of votes, much better than it used to be. Doesn't prevent a wave of one type of voter or another type of voter from washing that out just because the weather was good or the weather was bad. You never know, and it's why we stay up, and it's why we never get sleep on election night, no matter what.
And to be clear, there is one party in this country that is against everyone voting. There was a president who attacked his own government's electoral system every single day, like things that you could never believe might happen, and they have in fact happened. And so those are all kind of the headwinds. But it's still not over. There's still a lot of time. So I feel bad that we're only here for this sliver of time. But it's important to be clear-eyed and open-eyed, open to what is the reality right now. That it is not anywhere close to Biden running the table as was expected. That could change. There's still lots of places that might change. Let's take a look. Close election may come down to Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And Arizona, he's leading, Biden is, but we don't know what's going to happen. Lakshmi says, I will keep hope alive. You should. There's no reason you should not. Riaz says, very anxious watching from Canada. It's actually quite scary to think that Trump could win again. In many ways, another way to look at this, Bob, is that even if Trump doesn't win, the fact that he came so close tells you that if it weren't for the pandemic, that he would have easily won despite all his shortcomings. That tells you something about this country.
It tells you we're still in sad shape, and there'll be a lot of healing to be done if we get to the point where we can start the healing. Yeah, it just shows us that it's not the country that I thought it was, and that's very, very disappointing. We were supposed to be this kinder, gentler nation, but this is proving that we can easily be swayed by a maniac. I'm sorry. So it's upsetting.
And to think about all the hard work on the positive part of the cultural and social awakening around Black Lives Matter, it was all going so well when Trump weaponized some of the rioting that happened and made that the headline every single day. And journalists played into that, where you have to give the president a chance to speak, and then he'll just lie. And it's very hard to combat that. Let's talk about something you and I know a lot about, social media and technology. The other thing that the president, you've got to give him credit, his lies work. He said that the conservatives are being punished and censored by the big platforms, when in fact, every single day, 9 or 10 out of 10 of the most widely distributed stories were from conservative outlets and people. There are some days where an obscure former Secret Service agent named Dan Bongino had more social media traction than the New York Times, Washington Post, and CNN combined. Even he didn't know how that was possible.
That's when you know you have the bots and the other things working. But I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, but you're absolutely right. And so one thing is, if in fact Trump loses, you can go back and say all of those bots, all of those social media engagement that happened was not real life, right? There's a disconnect between real life and what you see. If, however, Trump wins, you've got to look at that again and say that there is this influence where facts, information, accurate news cannot compete with Facebook, with Twitter, when they're spewing and tolerating the immense amount of lies that are posted every single day.
No, I agree, and I had this discussion with my my colleague Eric Tate. I help him out with his public access TV show Media Watch, and we were just talking about how the media has been really jumping through hoops to try to give equal time to each side. And when you open the window and it's snowing, and one person says it's snowing and the other person says it's not the matter of giving equal time. It's the matter of pointing out that it's snowing. But when we cover politics, we'll cover this piece of news, and then we'll cover Trump talking about how he's cured and immune, and how this therapy works or that therapy works, and it needs to be the facts need to prevail, is what I'm saying, and we might have to adjust the way we cover politics to make sure that the facts, as best we know it, are there, no matter who says it, no matter what is said. But this plain old equal time for facts and lunacy doesn't work.
And that's one of the things that we have to talk about. We haven't talked enough about the pandemic on tonight's episode, even though we've talked about it for 237 other days, that he managed to convince people that the virus is not is not a big deal. If you get it, you will survive, and don't worry about it. The economics and the economy is more important than your health. And people bought into that, even with Fauci 2 days ago speaking out most bluntly for the first time, with Dr. Birx leaving in essence and breaking with the president. None of that mattered, because Trump just was able to flood the airwaves with people who are talking on his behalf and lying about everything you see here. So this is optimistic. With about 40% in, Minnesota is a state that he needs to flip. Here he's leading in Iowa with 100,000 votes, but only 42%. And this is where, for those of you joining late, what it really depends if the state is counting the early vote first or the Tuesday vote first. If you're counting the early vote first, a lot of it are Democrats who voted early. And that's why President Trump was fighting against early voting and mail-in ballots and everything else. And now, when the turnout has been much bigger among Republicans, and that's why the president was flying all over the country, not even all over the country, in those key states again and again and again, and trying to whip up those last set of people who go to the polls who don't care. And we had this amazingly horrific scene of Melania Trump not wearing a mask and voting today because she had the virus. So she presumed, like the president, she thinks she's immune for life. Just horrifying situation. And that's what we're in now. Let's hear a little bit of John King. One second. Let me just bring him up here.
Start moving up, right? The bigger states, the double digits, if you will, big double digits here, 30
I'll
plus,
give you a break, Bob. I'll just put it on
15,
full screen.
So you move it, then you're just moving up the math when you do the big ones. So that's what they're looking at in the Trump campaign right now. If we hold Texas, and they think they will, we hold Florida, they think they will. We're not done. That's just what they think. North Carolina, they've pulled ahead. It's close. We have to count them still. Same with Ohio. We're still counting votes. But as you see that happen, you see the election day surge pull you ahead. You think it's going to continue. It's not guaranteed. But that's what they think. And you know what? You wouldn't get a lot of pushback in the Biden campaign. They're still hoping the votes come back. But as you start looking at the map now, you start thinking, okay, this is a more traditional map, which again gets us back to where we began or where we ended 4 years ago. Whoa, how'd I do that? That was good. You do the double sometimes. It gets you. There you go. Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. This is where this night now looks like. A lot of us thought this would come down to this, and it certainly looks like it's going to again. Again, we're not done. You see Joe Biden with I think I'm going to glance over my shoulder. Yes, still leading a little bit in Iowa. You see a lead in Montana. We don't expect these to hold up, but we'll see, right? You get surprised sometimes. But so right now on the map, you're looking at this would be the only flip right now. That's the only flip we see for Joe Biden to get him up. But, it's easier to do it more quickly if you switch over here to the president's map. And so the flip we think so far, we're not done, is this. We believe so far the president's holding down here, which gets you back again. Arizona would get Joe Biden, plus the Clinton states. Arizona gets Joe Biden to 243. Well, then how do you get to 270, right? Could get one here. If you carry Maine, but then you need more. So if that gets you to 244, let's just say for the sake of argument, you get one of these. We're still waiting on 2 of those districts there. Let's just say you get one of them, right? So then you're looking here at 245. So what do you need, right? Do the math. You need 25. That would get you knocking on the door because that's 20, right? This is the state of these 3 states in the blue wall. That's the one the Trump campaign feels more confident about. That would be enough. Michigan and Wisconsin would get Joe Biden to 271 if he got these 2 congressional districts plus Arizona. The math gets interesting if the president can hold. Bring it out here. Sorry, now I got to fill them all in, but that's okay. Just fill them all in and come back. President does that. You think one congressional district could decide an American presidential election? Doesn't happen that often, but it is possible. This is where, again, if the possibilities, the menu at the beginning of the night, maybe we get Florida. In a dream world, we get Texas. Maybe Ohio's competitive. We think we can get North Carolina. At the moment, none of that is there. We're not done. It's possible it comes back. At the moment, none of that is there. So now your numbers crunchers are getting into the tougher math, the more difficult math, and the different scenarios. And trust me, they're calling into that congressional district. They're calling into that congressional district, and they're calling in a fury into these because now we're into tense time in both campaigns. And
in those 3 states, those so-called blue wall states, right, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, there's still plenty of outstanding votes there.
Plenty of votes. And again, we're going to say this repeatedly, and some people at home might not like that we say it repeatedly.
A lot of the early vote is outstanding too, where Democrats will do well.
It is, which is why as I come back over here, as you're watching the map throughout the night, in any election, again, we are 10:55. In any presidential election that's close, we're just getting started. We are just getting started. That would be the case 4 years ago, 2004, pick your close election. That's the case. This year's even more different because of the 3 different ways of voting and the different ways each state is handling that, right? The mail-in vote, the in-person early vote. And so here you go. We're going to look at it. 40% in. You see that big lead for Donald Trump. If you're a Republican, you have every reason to be happy about that. But you also need to have the context. You have to have the context. You come down here. This is Montgomery County, one of the big suburbs around Philadelphia, 29%. You go into Philadelphia, which is the biggest basket of votes, predominantly Democratic. Turnout here is absolutely key. We'll see if Democrats can deliver, but you're only 20% of the vote roughly there. You move up here, Bucks County. This is a more competitive suburban area, but you're still at 12% of the vote. Move out here, Chester County. This is where most of the votes are in Pennsylvania. Philadelphia and the suburbs that surround it, 30%. So you just have a long way to go. And we know, David Chalian told us earlier, a lot of the votes that are missing are the early votes, which we believe are disproportionately Democrat. And even if we were just counting for one set of votes, even if we were just waiting for all the votes counted today, what we have from this part of the state is so low that you just can't make conclusions. You just can't. We have to wait and see. And it looks good. The map looks at first glance to Republicans, but we're just nowhere near the finish line, nor are we in Michigan. 39% of the estimate, 54 to 43. You think that's a big number. If you remember how close this was 4 years ago, 10,000 votes, right? 10,000 votes decided this state 4 years ago. So it is just unrealistic. Even if the president's having a very good night, it's unrealistic that he's going to win Michigan by 238,000 votes. If he wins Michigan again, maybe it's by more than 10,000 votes, but it's not going to be by 238,000 votes. We just know that. So when you see that number, that's when you know this is the anomaly of 2020 and how we count votes, and we need to be patient.
Let's just take a break there and bring back Bob. Folks, thank you for watching. We had Sonal Shah and Deepa Sharma with us earlier. Bob and I are kind of just chatting and trying to understand what is going on here. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, go Big Ten. You have Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, Penn, home of Penn State. I mean, that's if we were talking football, that's who we would be pulling for, the Big Ten conference to come in. But in Wisconsin and in Michigan, I can understand, and Pennsylvania, of course, will be late. Wisconsin, as we discussed, is going to be late. I'm not in Wisconsin. I'd be stunned if it went Republican again. I'll just put it that way, based on what I've seen in the early voting and what I understand about how things went. But then again, you get out to Marathon, Warsaw County, Upstate, Marinette, Green Bay, that's all red. So if they did come out in the numbers that they needed to, that could happen. So heaven help us that this whole thing goes, to the to another level. A tie would be, I think, the worst possible outcome. This country will never heal if we end up like that.
And you know that would be a tie broken by Vice President Pence, and that would be certainly a problem. We are seeing, so Virginia, I'm still not clear why CNN is still here. Virginia has been called for Biden already by the AP. My son, who was watching this online earlier, was pointing out why did AP call it so early? And then now the question is, why isn't CNN calling it? So very, very interesting. It's, again, that mix of votes. I will, as we get ready to wrap up here, Bob, I want to just go back to the heart of what has changed for me, and I think a little bit for you as a journalist. I think 10 years ago, you and I would not be revealing our political interests so publicly, but I made a decision 4 years ago that the rise of Trump, even though I thought he would lose, I thought the rise of Trump was like the summer of '32 in Berlin, and our grandkids and relatives and next generation will ask us, where were you in the summer of '32? What did you do? And that's when I first decided I'm more an opinion journalist anyway these days. I'm not, covering politics directly. So I was going to, so let's just watch this for a second. No surprises here. California for Biden, and Oregon and Washington. These are all expected. So it's not going to make any difference here tonight. But just to go back to what I was saying is that I really feared a Trump presidency. I didn't think he could win. But if he won, I feared what he would do to immigrants and others. He told us all about it. So it's not like he was sneaking up on us. He told us. And so fast forward 4 years later, I am now even more clear about this. This is not about, conservatives versus liberals or anything like that. I believe Trump is an existential threat to America and to the planet. And that was before the pandemic. And after the pandemic, we have seen that he has caused the deaths of an extra 150,000 or so people who wouldn't have died if America had behaved like New Zealand or Germany even, which is a big country that doesn't handle it as well as it could have. And here we are today. So, Bob, that's my spiel. That's my rant. Reflect on that if you could, and your own journey along this way.
Well, I try to be tolerant, and I've said this before. I try to think sideways. In other words, step to the side and try to view things from another angle, from somebody else's shoes, from some other perspective. When it comes to the way he handled the pandemic, there's just I can't see any other side other than the way he dropped the ball and didn't go with the science and told lies. And when it comes to politically speaking, I remember saying in 2016, and before when he launched his campaign, when he came down the escalator at Trump Tower and said Mexicans were rapists and this and that. And I said to my friend, congratulations, Donald Trump. You'll be the first one to start and end your campaign on the very same day, because I figured there'd be an uproar and we would all dismiss this, clown as not fit for America based on what he just said. Obviously, I was so wrong, because there's such a section of this country that if they don't embrace it fully, they embrace it enough, either through his machismo, that's how they see it, through his tactics of just getting it done, and through his alleged faith in law and order above all else. So obviously, I didn't see it either. I definitely had no idea. And I'm stunned that it's this close tonight.
And we should point out that he started his campaign by calling Hispanics and Mexicans names, and he got a higher percentage of the Hispanic vote than Mitt Romney did 4 years before. You cannot make that up. And tonight, if he wins, it'll be in part because he got a higher percentage turnout of Hispanics in places like Florida and in other places. And so you have to ask, it's that culture war again, that people talking about immigration, once you're here, You don't care about whether other people like you. This is a country that is built on immigration and built by immigrants, and now it's turned into a bad word. Even though it wasn't a top priority in this particular election, he promised that Mexico would pay for that wall, and certainly it did not. And
it certainly didn't happen. I'm glad you had that one comment from a Canadian in the comments earlier in the show, because I forget the name of the paper, but I thought they had the best. I thought they had the best headline when Trump was elected. It was a picture of Trump, and it was a tabloid. The front page was, "Oh my God." That was in big bold letters, sort of Daily News style, and that just said it all to me. I saved that headline. I wish I could have pulled it up earlier, but yeah, other countries look at us and they're like, "What?" So, and here we are.
Yeah, and here we are. And then I want to go back. I'll just say, I said 2016 is the summer of 32 in Berlin, and what we learned about what happens when you don't pay attention to tyrants and despots, and what can happen. And there is a movie on HBO that you don't need to watch, miniseries, because if Trump wins tonight, that is the life we're going to lead. It's called The Plot Against America, and it's the story of a fictional story of if Charles Lindbergh, the famed aviator, if he had won the election, what would an alternate history of Charles Lindbergh, sort of like Trump, a celebrity who said nice things about Nazis and then had this terrible situation in this country. So, but I will just say to everyone watching that tonight my fear is about the pandemic. And we have lost so much. We've lost 250,000 people's lives. We have had millions of people unemployed. We've had millions of people sick. And by Trump, if he gets reelected, the stakes are so high, not just for this country, but for the planet. And then you add on to that the climate change worries. Because, by the way, if Trump wins again, he will be unleashed. Imagine if the last 4 years were the least version of Trump. What will he be like when he has nothing to lose? That's going to be something that we should all look out for. At this moment, it is not over. Biden has a good chance to win, but it is certainly not where we started at the beginning of the day and what the pollsters had predicted. And Florida clearly had a polling error, and we'll have to see what happens in other places. Let's listen to a little bit, and then I'll give you a final thought, Bob, and then we might as well take a break.
And again, we're just waiting on these three, and this is the patience.
It'll take some time, and all three of those are. We got a key race alert right now. I want to go to Nebraska right now, the 2nd congressional district. There, 57% of the vote is in. Biden is ahead by some 16,000 votes, 53.4% to 44.8% for Trump. John, this is one electoral vote.
By the way, look at this. It says brought to you by the Calm app. Did you notice that, Bob? The key alerts are brought to you by Calm, which is a meditation app, which is,
yes, I think we all need that right now. I agree.
But when you hear that sound, part of it is when you're reporting in these 53%, 48%, even 70% is not enough, because 75% of the vote in North Carolina that came in, 65% that came in, 95% it was all early voting. And so while early voting is only about 75% of the total. And that's why if North Carolina goes to Trump, that's because that was one of the key differences, is getting people to vote in person versus all the early voting. And again, the early voting may have lulled people that, everybody's voted and the count is so high. And
right. That might have had an effect, right, on the day of vote. Again, in Wisconsin, I know that the slow vote will come from Milwaukee County, Racine County, Kenosha County, and that bodes well for Biden. But that still doesn't. We don't know if there's enough there to make sure Biden has a cushion in that state. So yeah, this is very, very interesting.
And here, Rajan says, I've made the assumption that a re-elected Trump, there will be no national lockdown or subsidies for Americans out of work. Since we're not going to be on the air for the next 2-3 hours, Bob, I want you to think of two scenarios and reflect on both, and I will do the same. Trump wins. What does that mean for America? What does that mean about America? What does that tell us about America? If you remember, Van Jones had that brilliant immediate reaction in 2016 where he said what we felt was a white lash, and how Trump had whipped up fury in all these people, and they got to be racist for the first time and fight back. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on what if Trump wins and if Biden wins, and I will do the same, and we'll end the show with those two comments. So over to you.
Well, if Trump wins, then it truly shows that this country wants something that we probably never had, which is the America of the 1950s, where basically white men ran the show and others weren't hardly heard from, where the husband was the breadwinner and the women, they held the household. There's a certain segment of the country that wants that, but it's an America that actually was never there. I don't see somehow, somewhere, this country was resilient enough to get through 4 years of Trump. Somehow, somewhere, in some fashion, will, I hate to say it, get through another 4 years if it comes down to it. Not well, though. I'm afraid of what the pandemic result will be. I'm afraid of what the economic result will be. And I'm afraid of civil uprisings here and there as people of color don't get protected and this law and order state comes to pass. Biden presidency, I don't see perfection in Biden by a long stretch. I don't think he'll be the perfect president. I do believe that he'll be a reasonably competent president who can at least see a path to healing the divide a little bit. There'll be a part of the country he'll never be able to heal. And I see a path forward to recovering the health of America while maintaining the economy. So I don't see a brilliant utopia coming in the Biden election. I just see us somehow staggering back to reality.
Wow, Bob, you really put that so well, Bob. I would echo and underscore everything you said. The two things that I would worry in a Trump presidency, a second term, the unleashed Trump, what he would do to this planet and this country with climate change. We are reaching what is called a planetary point of no return in terms of everything that we all know, from the rising seas to climate change to the pain we're going to have, climate refugees. He's going to drill everywhere, and it's going to be a real problem. That's one. The second is the health of Americans and the world. By America not, taking care of its people the next 4 years, the way in which the science is going to be mishandled and twisted in order to have the vaccine, all of that is going to be a problem. The way Trump said that on November 4th, watch, the media won't talk about coronavirus anymore. If he wins, he's not going to talk about it anymore because he doesn't need to. There
Correct.
Isn't going to be that, the way the media works, as you know, it's opposite. It's a horse race, right? So they will keep talking about what Biden's doing. But now I really fear for what will happen in this country. I hope that tomorrow when I play this back, this is not the part of Trump winning is not what matters, but the fact that Biden wins. I think Biden wins saves so many of us. The people still die, but we start to get a handle on this process and where we go as a country with our healthcare, and then with the pandemic, and then secondly with everything happening for climate change. And I'll add one more thing: race relations and the health of this country. Just to have a president you're proud of. What do you say to your children about, again, I keep going back to that Van Jones clip where he said, parents, what do we as parents say to our kids tonight about do your homework, work hard, put in the effort. Those are the people that win. And you get a president who did none of candidate Trump, who did none of those things, and kind of it's a good guys finishing, winning, good guys losing, and a bad guy winning. The worst human being in history. He hasn't killed people like Stalin or Hitler, but by every other measure, the worst human being that we've ever had as a president. And that includes a country where we've had slaves, presidents who own slaves and everything else. And I just cannot, I shudder to think what will happen. But I'm remaining hopeful, and I will stay up all night to see this through. But Bob, I'm so grateful to you for being with us here tonight and helping us get some perspective. Have you caught any headlines while I was rambling on?
No, I have not. I've been focused on this, our conversation. But as you know, these are my regular hours anyway. So I'll be staying up to watch what the results are. I tend to stay up very late, as you know, and this I said a few months ago. I know there's a sector of Americans who are just too busy getting their kids fed and to school or to their virtual classes and to keep their homes in shape to really focus too much on national political news. But seriously, this is a time when people need to pay attention now that the election is over and we're getting back to actually having to do things other than talk about the other person. We really, as a nation, need just to pay attention, if not to every little thing that comes out of DC, but to be aware. And if you're aware of what this president is doing, you'll see through it.
You will. And we'll pause here. It's 11:15 Eastern time. This video will be saved for posterity. We'll hope it goes in one direction over another. But I have to tell you that the way the pollsters, maybe again they'll get the national numbers right, but certainly in Florida they got it wrong. And we'll see what happens in the rest of the country. That number is not looking good. 43%. Trump is ahead by 300,000 votes. There's still 2 million votes to be counted. Can Biden not just make that up, but then exceed it? That's the situation. And also, there was all this talk of whether there'll be a blowout on the popular vote. All of that will remain to be seen. So I am hopeful, but worried for sure. As I say goodnight here. And my guest has been Bob Anthony at New York Bob, a great voice on this show, as we have been talking for so many months now, sadly, about the virus and everything else. And here we are. So thank you, Bob. And we'll just say goodnight, everyone. Check out your favorite television station, and let's hope that we get a different result than what the trend is at this moment. But again, that can change very, very fast.
Yes. Stay involved.
Yes, stay involved. Whatever happens, stay involved, participate. I saw a great tweet that I do want to read out. Thank you, Bob, for reminding me that David Slack at Slack the Future said, whatever happens in this election, if you spoke up, if you marched, if you donated, if you phone banked, text banked, and even if you just talked to friends and family about how important their vote is, thank you. There are millions of us, and I'm proud to be with you. Really important that whatever happens, the fact that so many people work so hard, they shouldn't be dejected or deflated. If your favorite Senate candidate didn't win, for example, or anything like that, there's still a lot of work to be done. No matter who wins, there's so much work to be done to heal this country and take it forward.
Well said.
Thank you.